sort of two halves to that. So having that vision and being able to articulate it is obviously key, but it's actually being able to share that with the team and get all levels of the business engaged with it. And it's not the sort of utopian kind of Star Trek scenario where everyone's bought into this prime directive or whatever, but it is a case of allowing people to see that what we do today isn't the thing that we always have to do, and that they have a voice in that process, and even in forming the vision, because it's easy for somebody to sit in their office and whatnot and come up with great ideas, but everyone in the team is going to be making that a reality, not just the founder or the MD. So I think whenever you see that already in play, that's a really good indicator that this is a leadership and a group that's going to succeed. The foundation of what you need as a business comes from talking to your team, analysing your processes, and not necessarily accepting that your current way of operating is going to get you where you want to be. So that, again, the foundation comes into your vision as well, and deciding, where do I really want to be? Am I happy in my sort of 10-person or 20-person company just operating, or do I want to push on and be somewhere? And I'm not saying that either is right or wrong, but at least if you can articulate where do we want to be, and kind of then you can say, well, these are the things that are going to stop us from getting there. Hello folks, delighted to welcome you back to Made to Grow. The slight change of plan for this week's recording or episode is that my good friend, mentor, and all-round quality and manufacturing expert, Angela Fumpson, is going to interview me. So we thought that was going to be a fun way to turn the tables and share some more of the insights that I've picked up over the last 25, 30 years of digital transformation, before it was called that, cloud software before it was the cloud, and we'll see where it goes. So Angela, pleasure to have you back once again.
Thanks for inviting me back. I'm really excited to be putting you on the spot for a change. So I just thought it'd be fun before we dive into systems and digital transformation, as we call it, and just really touch on your journey as a consultant and obviously running Flowlens. And obviously you've seen the gap between strategy, how we set up, and reality. And I wanted to ask you, what's one leadership lesson that basically maybe you knew in the beginning, some of your learnings that you might want to share with your audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever you're first in business, you hear all these buzzwords around, having a vision and, that kind of painted picture kind of scenario, and trying to articulate what it is you're trying to do. And sometimes that can kind of feel a wee bit false, or hard to take seriously, because you have people who are naysayers who you'll never get there, or you're not quite sure how you're going to do something, but you can see that this possibility is there. But I think the thing I wish I knew at the beginning was to sort of trust the vision, because it's easy to get blown off course. And that's circumstances. It might be decisions you wish you hadn't made, people you wish you hadn't in the end recruited. But one way or the other, a clear vision is a good way to test, where am I now? The decision I'm about to make, is this the right decision? And will it help me get a step or two closer to the vision that I see?
Yeah.
And I think as well,
it is like a litmus test, isn't it, for making sure every action you take is aligned. But I know what you're saying about listening to lots of voices and environment when you're in business. I think people, there's two sides to the story here. So people don't really understand what they're doing until they have a confident and an expert to talk to, but sometimes there can be a lot of noise out there to listen to. So if you're talking to people that are actually in this state of change and they're ready to go on the digital transformation journey, how do you know a company is actually ready for that kind of transformation?
Well, it's sort of two halves to that. So having that vision and being able to articulate it is obviously key, but it's actually being able to share that with the team and get all levels of the business engaged with it. And it's not this sort of utopian kind of Star Trek scenario where everyone's bought into this prime directive or whatever, but it is a case of allowing people to see that what we do today isn't the thing that we always have to do, and that they have a voice in that process, and even in forming the vision, because it's easy for somebody to sit in their office and whatnot and come up with great ideas, but everyone in the team is going to be making that a reality, not just the founder or the MD. So I think whenever you see that already in play, that's a really good indicator that this is a leadership and a group that's going to succeed. Where you get pushback on that, that actually there's a disconnect between the leadership and the rest of the team, or perhaps the reality of whether or not that vision is achievable.
Yeah, I think that's a really important lesson to learn also in the transformation project, because I think it is a leadership, it is a vision and a team project more than software itself. So when you see leaders wanting the numbers and the efficiencies and the results very, very quickly, you need to wait for the team to catch up. And I think that's something we've talked about quite often is this waiting game when you start to put the software in and there's not immediate tangible results that you can see, because it's this human game, it's this team catching up rather than a technical one. So what about measuring success? When you've got these outcomes that you're looking for and these soft signals that you need to be watching for to know that this is working.
I suppose it's that kind of spirit of improvement. So you can tell that a team is bought in to getting to the next level, whenever they mightn't have all the resources, they mightn't have all the answers just yet, but they're not waiting for somebody else to come and make it better. So and they're thinking about, okay, how does this system improve what we can do? We're not perfect. Maybe we don't have all of our bills of materials signed off yet, but that doesn't mean to say that we can't start having incremental improvements. Having more discipline around purchasing and stock management, for example, is a really good one. So I suppose it's that, as you said, it's kind of a soft indicator of success. If people aren't waiting for that perfect scenario,
so they're engaging with you and they're asking questions and they're more and they're using it and trying it and experimenting with it.
Yeah, exactly, and they know that they've got the backup of the leadership. It's we kind of say it often. It's not the MD or the founder's job to be the digital champion, but they need to be the second loudest cheerleader, and they need to lead from the front. So in a scenario where people can see that happening, then they know they have more latitude to get their hands dirty to try things out.
I think, and once you do it in stages, people start to see evidence of that on the shop floor. It's like building cell by cell, isn't it? So, what would they see that encourages them more to use it when you start rolling it out on the shop floor, say?
Yeah, well, a good example of that is purely communication, or the things that seem normal to a small manufacturer, where the shop floor guys are constantly asking what's next. I've got a problem. Stopping the flow every time they reach an impediment. Whereas even if a system isn't fully deployed onto the shop floor, if it's making the office more efficient and creating more visibility, what's coming down the line, what's in the queue, what's our priorities, then it really does reduce the level of noise that's there. Now, what I would say is that you don't want to wait till the office have put a system in to then involve the shop floor. That they should be part of the conversation, even if it's, as you say, it mightn't be step one. You need to get your ducks in a row with your master data and your kind of core processes to be able to then feed quality information to the shop floor. But in the meantime, while you're doing that, they can start to see, okay, well, we're getting more organized. We're thinking about our order book priorities and whatnot, so that their voice is heard in terms of what makes their life easier.
Yeah, I was just thinking it is good to see examples of that, because it's very hard to imagine that when you're up there at the first instance of putting software in, and if you don't know what to look for, it can be a real big unknown. And you can put software in and you can almost want to leave before you've even started, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
When you start implementation, I always find that support doesn't also need to go in at the beginning. It needs to be later in the line, when everyone's questioning, I'm already in this now, but it's quite clunky, and am I doing the right thing? And we start questioning, but it's not straight after we put the software in. It's weeks down the line that you start to think, okay, have I done the right thing? So it's helpful to understand these examples so that people know what they're looking for and then know they're on that success rate.
Yeah. No, I mean, the mistake a lot of companies make is that they think they should try and come up with a list of features that they need, and then they try and tick the boxes against that list. Does your system do this, this, and this? But they haven't had the conversations about the problems that they're trying to solve, because any software in this industry will say it handles inventory, for the sake of argument, or but unless you've really understood the kind of problems that you have as a company, how can you test whether a piece of software is going to address those problems? And then back to your point as well, that humans are only capable of assimilating so much information, so much change, and our brains are kind of good at rewiring, but it takes a period of time.
It has to become habit and second nature, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much that you could dive into in this, but obviously, a champion internally who's going to sort of nurture that change of habits, as well as that feeling of buy-in that people will have if the system is something that they've had a say in, rather than something that's been imposed upon them. But also then having that safety net, and as you say, like we do have a much more long-term implementation process, and people kind of go, why does it take so long? And we're transparent and say, well, humans are humans. It takes this level of time to get these new habits embedded, and you won't remember everything, and it's a case of don't bite off more than you can chew.
The Made to Grow podcast is brought to you by Flowlens, the simple, affordable MRP system specifically designed for SME device, equipment and machinery manufacturers. Our top-rated cloud-based software can help you cut down on wasted materials, time and money, and eliminate the chaos of running your manufacturing with spreadsheets and hope. Our customers have reported savings of over a day per week per person in their business by cutting out needless admin, duplication of work and countless mistakes. Plus, lead times are shortened by up to 75%. And after hundreds of successful implementations, we've got the blueprint for manufacturing success nailed down. Head over to flowlens.com for a quick video tour of the software and to hear from more manufacturers like you who have transformed their businesses with Flowlens. Now, back to the interview.
That's sort of anticipating the next question, because I was going to ask you about how, what this adoption process looks like and how we do ensure that that's, an implementation example. How do we look at implementing in the right way rather than putting everything in, because people can only absorb so much information, and we don't want to lose sight of the big picture, but we need to do it, piece by piece.
Yeah. And I think as far as possible, you're looking for the lowest hanging fruit. And there's two ways to look at this. What's a quick win that we can demonstrate some early promise, and people can say that people who haven't had exposure to this kind of technology before, how can they see what good looks like in the context of change? But the other thing that because a lot of manufacturing companies are so close to the day to day, they aren't asking themselves necessarily what are the bottlenecks, what are the things that are effectively slowing down that cash cycle, which is ultimately what it's about, and it's ultimately where a lot of the stress comes in terms of managing a manufacturing company. So again, rather than approaching it from this, like, right now we're going to import your customers, and we're going to go through this sort of again checkbox process. It's like, okay, where can the system relieve the most pressure, and how do we get to that point as quickly as possible? Because A, you obviously improve cash flow. B, you're going to sell people on the benefits of the solution. But thirdly, you're going to have give people more time back. Then they've got that inspiration, and what can they do with it?
And if that's the team and the shop floor, and they can see those huge wins and those big differences, then you've just brought in a lot of people into the vision of the transformation as well, because it's people that are really fighting these battles on the shop floor and not in the offices. So yeah. I was just thinking, because we can't go without mentioning your Fearless book, because I enjoyed learning about that and being part of it. So to me, I think it really helps people understand what they need to address before they even get down to the looking for the software. So maybe we can, look at areas that people should think about before they even get to, right, I need to go and purchase this software. Things like, is the company change ready? And other, maybe you can talk about a few points that people need to think about first from your experience. And maybe some examples.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of alluded to this a minute ago. A lot of companies, and again, time poor or whatever, but manufacturers make the mistake of saying, right, I've decided I need a software to run this business. I can't take these spreadsheets anymore. And then they start looking at, typing into Google or asking friends, and then they try and do a free trial, and then they realize they're not 100% sure what they're trying to get out of the free trial, and they're all different, so there's a huge amount of time needs to be invested in that. And this is where, like, the Fearless begins with foundations, and then carries on to engagement. So there are two things we've sort of touched on, but the foundation of what you need as a business comes from talking to your team, analyzing your processes, and not necessarily accepting that your current way of operating is going to get you where you want to be. So that, again, the foundation comes into your vision as well, and deciding, where do I really want to be? Am I happy in my sort of 10-person or 20-person company just operating, or do I want to push on and be somewhere? And I'm not saying that either is right or wrong, but at least if you can articulate where do we want to be, and kind of then you can say, well, these are the things that are going to stop us from getting there, and that then comes on to the E, which is the engagement piece. And I suppose the best example of that is anywhere where either a manufacturer on their own bat or off their own bat, or having engaged us, or indeed you, to come in and do some process mapping and engagement.
Yeah, I think the processes and the vision are absolutely important, and I think that's a very valid point, because it can be quite scary if they're bringing software in to solve the problem today, but suddenly they're going to 10 times they're in this expansion mode. That software might not be flexible and capable of dealing with the size that they're heading to. So we don't need to fix the problems now. We need to understand the vision and grow with it. Yeah. So that's a really, really important point. I know we talk about processes all the time. It's just so important to understand how everything is happening. But I think I didn't really want to go through some more points of the fearless, or even think about from a practical perspective what people miss most. Because there's a big danger also if you look at the software and you mold your business towards the software instead of you dictating your processes, which is where I always come from. We need it to be bespoke, not bespoke software, but we need to steer our processes and then decide what will fit, what has the most must-haves, nice-to-haves. But I think it'd be nice to understand, what, as an example, most companies miss so that we can pick up on that. Oversights, maybe.
Well, it sort of probably sound like a bit of a broken record, but they typically miss the actual understanding of what are the impediments in their business, because they make assumptions, about how they think things happen on the shop floor, or how they think supply chain works, and so on. And on top of that, they don't get that feedback from people to really understand what it is they're looking for. The second mistake people make is trying to put a bad process into a system, because just because it's slightly faster to do the bad process doesn't make it any better for your customers, your staff, or your cash flow. So and that's the thing where taking that step back and challenging companies, and we do this with our discovery demos, where we're trying to understand, is this a good partner for us, because are they thinking the same way we are about improvements and optimizing their business, rather than just making the assumption that, oh well, I've shortlisted 3 MRP systems and we'll pick the one that we like the look of most. There's an element of that too, but you're right. You need to be able to have something you can cross-reference. What does our business actually need, and what will these systems do? And the ecosystem element that you get with more niche products like Flowlens gives you the flexibility to mix and match as time, as you said, that scaling point. As time goes on, you're not bound into one big platform, old school. You can adapt and evolve as your needs do.
Okay, so thinking about looking ahead, one of the questions that might be good for you is to look ahead with Flowlens and how Flowlens is developing. If we thought about the next 3 to 5 years, with the vision of Flowlens and your philosophy of keeping ahead of the curve, what are we looking for in terms of vision, and what can we expect from Flowlens in the future?
So anyone who tells you where technology is going to be in 3 to 5 years is lying to you, or maybe isn't from this planet. So like our philosophy has been always to try and be the best we can be for our customers. And, over the last couple of years, that's required a lot of kind of taking things apart to put them back together again, to be able to have a platform and an offering that is going to be fit for purpose for manufacturers in the future. And that's, you've got the rise of AI, you've got the macroeconomic climate, or global affairs, euphemistically put. You've got you've got the demographic dilemma as well, where some industries are crying out because AI is going to decimate industries like marketing and a lot of white collar stuff, but actually manufacturing and the workforce, the people that are entering the workforce versus the demand that's predicted for different types of manufacturing, it's going in the opposite direction. So I suppose basically our vision is to be able to be at that kind of point of facilitating a kind of best use of technology to allow companies to do the best thing that they do, and minimize, as far as our kind of offering is concerned, the impact and the bottlenecks that processes and data and whatnot could cause, and see where it goes.
Using more intelligently than to work for us within secure parameters, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the trick, and that's where there's sort of nervousness. I was speaking to a customer earlier, and that was the first question that they had about this kind of thing. Is just like, well, who's going to have my data and what are they going to be able to do with it and so on. So, that there are lots of unanswered questions as to how well ring fenced these things are and what the exposure is. But I think the thing that's worrying, and I don't want to sound like one of these technologists who's sort of predicting that everyone's going to have a 1 day work week and $2,000 a month basic income and everything's going to be fine. I think society needs to have a better conversation about all of this.
I agree.
But unless you're going to actually just ban AI, ban robotics, and so on, we aren't going to be able to put that genie back in the box. These capabilities are going to be possible, and the people that are riding that wave could potentially be eating the lunch of a lot of smaller manufacturers.
I agree. We've got to embody it, but we've got to regulate it at the same time. We've got to make sure it's safe. That's the important thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you said, doing the work for you, absolutely. There's, that we're moving beyond the interface and allowing it to let the humans do what they're best at. But and again, this is a rhetorical question, with what AI is capable of, compared to humans, what will our USP be? But that's a topic for a whole different podcast.
Yes, that is definitely. So can we do a last question more back to you then, obviously after the challenges of building Flowlens and obviously running a tech company, what keeps you motivated? As a mentor, I love to ask these questions. So what keeps you motivated in Flowlens?
I think it's the people, seeing the difference that we make for people's work lives and personal lives. People who no longer have to spend their Sunday preparing the plan for the week ahead, or buried in emails because they can't get through their inquiries and orders. That's what keeps us going. And notwithstanding what we just talked about in terms of automation and robotics and whatnot, the opportunities to keep doing that and keep supporting companies that are really, really innovative, but maybe not quite reaching their potential because the scaling dynamics don't work. Whereas as the tech becomes more capable, then this kind of thing, achieving that vision that you set out, is also more achievable.
Yeah, not working into evenings. It can be as easy as not spending 3 hours producing data for dashboards and a board meeting, It can be very simple, but to take the pressure off somebody is awesome. So as your podcasts always finish on one piece of advice, one piece of actionable advice that we can leave your audience with to accelerate their digital success. So what would you like to leave as a tip today?
So if you're contemplating digital transformation or adopting digital tools, you need to have a champion in the business. It needs to be somebody who is well versed in the business, is respected in the business, and has the time to be able to deliver. That so many projects fail whenever either the founder tries to do this themselves and they're just too busy. It's not that they aren't driven. And in other cases, they're like, oh, well, we'll get this new person who's, just out of uni and so on. And unless you got really strike it lucky with somebody like that, their inexperience will cause ripples throughout the team because they will not have the authority to culturally to be able to make the change happen.
That's a really good point, because you've got to have the energy, but you've also got to have the experience and the knowledge of individuals as well.
Yeah, exactly, and that that comes with experience. So it's not an easy one whenever you've got a small team. But again, it comes back to one of the earlier points. Look for the opportunities and low-hanging fruit to save time. There are things, if you step back and analyze your processes, that are unnecessary, duplication, or just plainly not needed anymore, that take up people's time, and also create boundaries. Constantly, it's fair enough the shop floor need to know what's happening, but create times whenever that communication is possible, and other times whenever it's not possible, because if you don't give yourself the time, it will never happen. And there's so many stories of people who contact us, and like, yeah, I would really want to do it this year, but they just don't commit the resources in the right way.
You need the people resources, don't you? And the people resources for communication as well. It's not just sharing your vision. You need to have that open forum for people come to you as well. But that takes up a lot of time to be able to answer that. So thank you for that. Yeah. Okay, I'm just conscious of time. I'm watching the time for you. But thank you for sharing and being saying yes to being put on the spot and sharing a little bit of insight into your journey and sharing your lessons learned. Yeah, I think what I'm taking away most is that this digital transformation isn't digital. It isn't software. It is a leadership project, and we need to really connect with our teams and take ownership and give resources to it, because then you get a real return on investment. So I am going to hand back over to you to close out. But yeah, thank you for being put on the spot, and thank you for answering questions honestly and openly with us.
No worries. I appreciate, Angela, as always, through our relationship, you've always challenged me and come up with great ideas. And this is just one of the latest ones. So I was happy to be interviewed for a change. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons why we put the Fearless book together was that it was a good way to encapsulate the overall environment in which people are, whether they realize it or not, heading into, and that we can save them some time and some heartache by learning from that experience. So I would wrap up by thanking you again for this, and also encouraging listeners to visit flowlens.com and download the Fearless ebook, which is in the resources section there, or contact me, rich@flowlens.com, and I can arrange to send you a paper copy. So
and come and have a conversation with you.
Well,
really
exactly.
Come and
Yeah.
have a conversation.
Yeah, nothing beats that. There's this sort of wariness with software vendors, and I get that. But being able to have that conversation and talk about the business problems and opportunities uncovers so many unthought of aspects of this. We can help you save some time and get things in the right order.
Amazing, thank you.
So with that, until next time, thanks again, Angela.